Hey everybody, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Westminster Wednesday, where each week we look at one question from the Westminster Shorter Catechism and we explain its meaning and its significance for our lives today. So in our last episode, we looked at the decrees of God, and we saw that the decrees of God show us that God has ordained everything that comes to pass, from the greatest events of world history down to the smallest events of our everyday lives. God has ordained it all. And today we come to another question that relates to the decrees of God and builds on that question. Question number 8 asks this. It asks, how does God execute his decrees? And the answer is that God executes his decrees in the works of creation and providence. Now, this answer shows us that God carries out his work in the world not only by creating everything that exists, but also by governing everything that exists through his providence. Or to put it simply, God is not just the creator of all things, he is also the governor of all things. Now, this answer rejects one of the popular worldviews that we see in the 19th and 18th centuries, which was the worldview of deism. And some people would still hold to the worldview of deism today. Deism teaches that God created all things, but that after he created all things, he stepped back and he's no longer involved in his creation. He's removed from his creation, he's separate from it, and he's not involved in it. Now, the problem with deism is it's just simply not biblical. The Bible affirms that God did not just create all things, but he continues to be involved in his creation by governing everything that happens through his providence. One of my favorite illustrations of this is the story of King Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible, where we read about part of his story in the book of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar was the great and mighty king of Babylon, and he was a mighty king. But that was the problem, and that was that he became too big for his britches, so to speak. His pride got the best of him, and he failed to acknowledge that it was God who was supreme over the earth, not him. He saw himself as the one who was supreme over the earth. And so, as a consequence for his pride and to punish him for his pride, God temporarily removed the kingdom from Nebuchadnezzar and actually drove him insane for a period of time as punishment for his pride. Now, if you read further on in the book of Daniel, you'll discover that eventually God did restore Nebuchadnezzar and restored his sanity. And after he was restored, he acknowledged God's supremacy over all the earth. And when he did that, he spoke some amazing words. Listen to what Daniel 4, verse 34 and 35 says. It says, "At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. And I blessed the Most High and praised and honored him who lives forever." And then listen to what he says now about God. He says, "For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will amongst the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?'" You see, Nebuchadnezzar, when he was restored, had a sense and an understanding that God reigned supreme over all the earth, that God didn't just create the earth, but that he governed everything that happened on the earth. He sets up kings and he brings down kings. He is sovereign over everything. And so those words are a reminder to us that God executes his decrees both through the works of creation and providence. He's not just the creator of all things. He is the governor of all things. And that is a reminder, a daily reminder to us that no matter what is happening in our lives and no matter what is happening in the world around us, God is at work. He is doing his work to govern all things according to his good purposes through his wise and his good providence.